Happiness through curiosity on the Ranveer Show. Right before I moved into this house where I'm recording this podcast, I visited perhaps the most important travel destination that I've ever visited till date, the city of Banaras. Fortunately, I vlogged that whole series, so it's a memory that I'm going to share with my children when I have children. But visiting Banaras was the biggest shift in my own spiritual journey. I can't even explain it in words. It's also why I'm choosing to do this podcast in English, because my thinking language is in English. Unfortunately, if I'm podcasting in Hindi, it takes me some time to get into a state of flow. I can reach a deeper state as of now, and I hope that changes in time. But I can reach a deeper state in English. Banaras. Of all the temples there, for some reason, the moment I heard about something called a Kaal Bhairav Mandir, I was drawn to that immediately. I didn't know why. Just because of how the name sounded. I didn't even know what Kaal Bhairav was. In fact, on that trip, of all the legendary mandirs in Banaras, I only wanted to go to the Kaal Bhairav Mandir. I didn't know why. Very genuine story. Went to the temple, documented it for the sake of the vlog, had an intensely connected experience. I felt at home in that temple. That's what led me to studying more about that particular devta or god or deity as we call it. What I got to know is that it was a form of Shiva. Keep in mind, at this point, my YSS meditations are going strong. I felt like I was spiritually advancing down the path of Kriya Yoga. But there was something about that Kaal Bhairav energy that just stayed with me. Right after that, we moved into this house, which was like a big turning point in my own career. It was a huge surge of material success suddenly, just moving into this house. Right after that Banaras trip. But parallelly, I went through a lot of suffering in my initial phase in this house, because I started dealing with the problem that so many of us face, which is loneliness. Loneliness hit me like a truck even though I was meditating. And when your mental health goes for a toss and you're on a spiritual journey, no matter how disciplined you are with your meditation, sometimes you'll fall off the rail. My meditation journey definitely got affected with YSS. I did reduce my meditation, not significantly, but a bit. For the first time in 5 years, I kind of took a step back from meditating as much, and I just had too much that I was dealing with, both in terms of the inflow of material success in my life and the outflow of my mental health. In fact, I think that up till age 28, 29, how old I was when I moved in here, I didn't really have a terrible mental health phase since my career had begun. Before that, yeah, sure, because of exams and all that, my mental health was up and down. But in my adult life, in my true adult life, my mental health was solid thanks to the meditation. Now I've reached a phase where I've moved out of my house. I'm seeing so much material success, but I'm dealing with so much loneliness. And I've not gone for therapy at that time as well. I reduced my meditation, and that whole year, the whole of last year was not easy. Tumultuous. It was like a tornado happening. The way I live my life for the sake of podcasting is that we have to release 4 episodes a week. That means I'm recording at least 5 times a week, usually 6 times a week. Sometimes it goes up to even 11 to 12 times. It's an intense job. But I'm enjoying the material success. So the way life works when you're a YouTuber is that you kind of lose a track of time. You're just concerned with work because you know that your stuff is growing because of your consistency. As I moved forward through last year, in about November of last year, I met someone called Rajarshi Nandy, who many of you are very familiar with. I'm sure if you've clicked on this podcast, you've already seen podcasts of myself with Rajarshi Nandy. He's not my guru. He is not a guru. But sometimes on your own spiritual journey, you meet mentors who just twist your spiritual path a little bit. And I use the word twist with a lot of caution, I use the word twist with a lot of positivity. Strangely, the day I met him was Kaal Bhairav Jayanti, which is like Kaal Bhairav's birthday. In that 1 year, the thoughts of Kaal Bhairav, even though they were strong, they kind of faded away. But on that day, because of Rajarshi Nandy sir, I remembered visiting the Kaal Bhairav Mandir almost exactly a year ago in the previous year. If you've seen any of our old Rajarshi Nandy episodes, you'd know how intense that first conversation was. Because we spoke about so many dark things, because we spoke about so many deep things in that first conversation itself. I remember that my head was spinning after I spoke to him. 3 episodes and I was getting chakkar, as they call it. That was my introduction to what we now know as Tantra. When you use the word Tantra publicly, people kind of get scared. People think that, oh, is it dark? Is it related to black magic? Oh my God, what is this pseudoscience? Tantra loosely translates to technique. If you're born in a Hindu family, you've seen your parents performing pujas, you've gone for religious ceremonies where they carry out different rituals. All those rituals are techniques. And Tantra loosely translates to technique. You've already seen Tantra around you while you're growing up in temples in this country. Tantra is all around us. The word Tantra has a negative connotation because of the gifts of British imperialism. Not going to get deep into that. We've spoken about that on an episode with Rajarshi Nandy sir. That first meeting with him was an introduction to the world of Tantra for me. Was an introduction to the fact that through mantras or chants from ancient India, you do gain access to spiritual growth. The goal of Tantra is the same as the goal of deep meditation, which is spiritual growth. Rajarshi Nandy introduced me to the beauties of Shaivism. Sanatan Dharma, as they call it, Hinduism as the world calls it, is divided into different schools, many of which are now extinct. The 3 prominent ones in India today are Shaivism, Shakt, which is related to Shakti, Devi worship, and Vaishnavism, which is related to praying to Vishnu, Shri Ram, Shri Krishna. He introduced me to Shaivism in a deeper way. The stuff I discuss with some of my guests that I can never record and put online, especially when it comes to spiritual guests. Sometimes the conversations that we have outside of this room are much more explosive than the conversations we have in this room. So let's just say he introduced me to aspects of Shaivism. He explained the most basic form of Bhairav worship. I want to talk about Bhairav a little bit because possibly through this podcast, I am trying to understand it deeper as well. Solo podcasts are always made from a state of flow, and flow is achieved when you're able to reach your own emotional depths and bring creativity out from there and put it in front of the world. In the same way that Krishna is an avatar of Vishnu, they say that Bhairav could be understood to be an avatar of Shiva. But in the same way that perhaps Krishna and Vishnu are the same, yet slightly different, when you truly try to understand Bhairav, you realize that it is slightly different from Shiva. In the same way that people know that Hanumanji is a Chiranjeevi, that he is alive in our realm, in our time, and he's here to help you if you call out to him. Bhairav is the same. The issue is that all of us have grown up in a time where we know about Krishna, we know about Hanumanji, we know about Shiva, we know about Vishnu, we know about Devi Ma. We've rarely heard about Bhairav while we were growing up. Lots of people believe that Bhairav worship reduced in our country because of the last 1,000 years that were full of invasions and attacks and the likes. People believe that a lot of Bhairav temples in the north of the country were completely destroyed, And Bhairav worship was not that prevalent in the south of the country anyway. I don't know what the truth is. This is just information I'm relaying off of the show. Now, parallelly, coming back to my journey, we were talking about how my meditations were reducing a little bit. But come what may, I was practicing the Hong Saw technique. Now, I'm trying to execute this podcast in English. English as a language has certain limitations when you're trying to explain ancient Bharatiya concepts. So I'm going to try my best. And I also definitely want to say that I am understanding Bhairav much more as my spiritual journey moves forward. So pardon me, audiences, as well as Bhairav, in case I make a mistake in my explanation, but I'm going to try my best. What I've noticed, especially about Kaal Bhairav as a deity, is that it's about speed and hustle. That's how I'd describe the energy. Lots of people believe that Kaal Bhairav is a deity that you pray to in order to hasten your spiritual journey, which will also mean that it will hasten your karmas, it will hasten your suffering in order for you to reach a neutral state of worshipping and eventually reaching your Ishtadev. Your Ishtadev is supposed to be the god that's the closest to your heart. If you're a Hindu and I ask you to close your eyes and I ask you to visualize God, the god that you visualize, they believe is your Ishtadev. So Bhairav often enters people's lives in order to hasten up things and then make them reach their actual Ishtadev. And for many people, Kaal Bhairav himself, or one of the Bhairavs themselves, is the Ishtadev. That's a very basic explanation of what Bhairav energy is. Alright? This amount of knowledge will be required to understand what happened in my life going forward. So after the Rajarshi Nandy episode, I am deeply intrigued by Tantra. I deep dive into the subject. There was too many of these micro spiritual instances, dreams, meeting people like Rajarshi Nandy, understanding Tantra more. There was too many of these micro instances that made me realize that maybe a slightly more fierce tantric path is my path in spirituality. I remember being a child and watching my mum pray in front of the temple inside my house. And I remember her chanting one mantra after another, and each of the mantras was about a different god. And she'd tell me that, okay, this mantra is for this god, that mantra is for that god. And that was my subjective understanding of spirituality when I was a child. Seeing the most spiritual person that I knew then, which was my mum, pray. And I thought that that's the right way to pray. Somewhere as a 29-year-old sad adult, I understood that Tantra is about a similar school of thought. Very bad and rudimentary explanation of Tantra. Please don't take this as a quote. Please don't understand it this way, but this is a very bro way of explaining it. A lot of the deities in Tantra are like your Avengers, and in different stages of your Tantra practice and your Tantra growth, you will have to pray to different deities. That's how the rules of Tantra work. So even if you're a part of Shaivism and you begin with your Bhairav worship, eventually you might reach a phase where you'll have to pray to Devi Ma. You'll have to pray to Krishna. I'm not going to get into the details of that because I'm not a guru. I don't wish to mentor anyone on this path because I don't know enough about this path. But this is my understanding from having spoken to Rajarshi Nandy in detail. Coming back to the story. This subjective reality of multiple deities and praying to multiple deities through multiple mantras, it sat even more deeply in my heart than Kriya Yoga did. It sat more deeply in my heart than everything that VSS said. And trust me, nothing had reached as deep as VSS when it came to spiritual direction. These kind of thoughts, along with the prior year of not being in the best mental health, just made me think that maybe it's time that I just experiment with a newer path. And that led me to my basic practice, my first basic practice in the world of Tantra, which was taking a simple mala and doing a mantra jap on Om Bhairavaya Namaha. That was my first step. I'm not going to get into the details of the practice. Rajarshi Nandy on his own YouTube channel has created a very detailed instruction manual about how to go deeper into Bhairav worship. What I will definitely say is that a lot of things happen as an outcome of that practice. They say that the goal in Tantra is not just attaining liberation or nirvana. They say that the goal in Tantra is allowing the deity to sit inside your heart to a degree where eventually you become the deity. And this happens over decades, perhaps lifetimes, depending on how much intensity you can give your own sadhana or your discipline. Swami Vivekananda had once said that every step I take into the light is mine forever. Lots of people can understand this simple quote in many ways. The way I understand it is that when you die, you're not going to take any of the money, any of the fame, any of the love and relationships with you beyond death. The only thing you take with you beyond death is the spiritual growth you've achieved in this lifetime. You'll carry that on to your next life. And the more spiritual growth you have, chances are the next life will be more conducive for spiritual growth, which perhaps could mean that all your difficulties happen early in your childhood, in your life, and then eventually in life, your path is cleared for a smoother spiritual path. It could mean that you're given a lot of material comforts throughout your life so that you can just focus on the spirituality, which for me is the purpose of material growth and material gifts and material blessings anyway. Everything is given to you so that you get bored of it and you leave and you focus on what actually matters, the stuff you carry into your next life. Every step I take into the light is mine forever. That's what Bhairav worship also teaches you, because effectively when you're praying to Bhairav, you are indirectly praying to Shiva. If you approach your Tantra sadhana, your discipline with ferocity, and trust me, I approach it with ferocity because that's the only way I know how to play this game of life. If you approach your Tantra sadhana with ferocity, not only will you experience mystical happenings in your own life, not only will you have divine dreams, not only will you have a lot of divine moments in your life, but you'll also see that everything that you've thought of achieving materially comes to you very fast and you get detached from it very fast. It's been a year of learning about Bhairav and Tantra sadhana, and it's been only about 3 months or so of actually practicing on the Om Bhairavaya Namaha mantra. What I feel at this stage is a very, very deep sense of detachment. Stoicism, which is a philosophy from the West, Stoicism is all about being unaffected by the wins and losses. For me personally, I believe Shaivism talks about the same concept, or at least turns you into the same concept. That's what I've been feeling lately. I'm able to see everything from an extremely detached standpoint, and that's one of the best places to be in terms of mental health. My mental health was terrible last year, and I'm not saying that spirituality is a substitute for therapy. I think it goes hand in hand with therapy. It's the partner of therapy. Your human side has to find itself and discover itself through therapy, and your soul has to find itself and discover itself through meditation, through practice, through sadhana. What does my sadhana entail right now other than doing multiple malas of the Om Bhairavaya Namaha mantra? I'm also working on the Soham or Hongzor technique that I learned from YSS. That's still a massive part of my life. Every single day, especially before the shoots begin at 12 noon, by 10:30, I'm in this very room and I'm meditating. I begin with the technique I learned at YSS. I still thank my wise as gurus. If it's an important podcast for which I'm nervous, I'll notice that the meditation goes even deeper. I'll come out of it, I'll light a diya, and then I do at least one mala of my Om Bhairavaya Namaha mantra. That's pretty much what I'm doing in terms of the sadhana I can share with you guys online. There is some more stuff which I'm not able to talk about publicly at this point. It's nothing crazy. I'm getting deeper into it. But what I wish to say is that this, I feel, is the big blessing of my life, that I'm able to practice the sadhana and share aspects of it with you guys publicly. If you enjoyed this clip from the Ranveer show, we've uploaded a ton of other clips related to a ton of other topics. So explore the channel because there's something for everyone.